is up, ladies and gentlemen? Mark Christopher here again with another Hippie Picks interview with my Honduras coffee mug and my Honduras call. Oh! Listen, we have a very special guest today, and there's a very important reason why I am wearing this shirt. Because I'm interviewing a friend of mine, and you guys are going to flip your lid when you find out who this is. I met this guy, not this guy, this is me with longer hair. I met this guy in Honduras, and I happened to be wearing this shirt. And he looked at me and went, "Ha, be a hippie." I was a hippie. Kid you not, ladies and gentlemen, this guy has worked with Peter, Paul, and Mary. He's worked with Bob Dylan, Crosby, Stills, and Nash. So many other people. He's went on to have a recording studio, and then he went on to make his own guitars. Now, when I say make his own guitars, when I met him, I was with a friend of mine named Joey Harris down in Honduras. There's 1,000 people with us, not 1,000, but there was a small group with us. But Joey Harris' son looked at him and said, "Sir, does anybody famous buy your guitars?" And he went, "Son, only famous people buy my guitars." This dude is awesome. His name is Steve Brown. You may not know the name, but you probably have heard of him in 1,000 other different ways. So let's get Steve on board. Steve.
Hey.
There you are. I see you now. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I was telling the fine folks just a second ago that the first time we met, I was wearing this shirt.
That's right. And I gave you a bad time about being a hippie.
Yeah, you said.
You're talking to someone who.
You said, "Son, I was a hippie." And I was like, oh my gosh. Oh, man. Yeah.
I actually think about that often.
So I'm very cognizant. Every time I wear, I go, "Man, I know a real life hippie though, like for real." So, okay, you're Steve Brown. You live in California.
Right, Southern California.
Southern California, and you were an original hippie back in the day.
That's right. The first date I had with my wife was at Haight-Ashbury.
Okay. That's a hippie place, I'm assuming?
The hippie place in San Francisco. That's where all the hippies hung out.
Nice.
See, you're young. You don't know this stuff.
Got to cover up my shirt right now, change and get a different shirt. I'm sorry.
Haight-Ashbury are two streets. And that's where, that's where everybody hung out.
Gotcha.
Crazy place.
So you're a guitar player, yes?
Yes.
How long have you been playing guitar?
Since 1963.
Man.
I went to college and my roommate had a guitar, and I learned to play the guitar, and I forgot to go to class, and I actually flunked out of school. And 7 or 8 years later, I actually went to school and, graduated and got a degree. But yeah, that's how I started playing the guitar.
Okay. Nice.
And it's been a love affair the whole time.
Yeah. Were you self-taught or did you have lessons?
I only had one lesson. A girl that worked, I was in Berkeley, and a girl that worked the same place I was working was a pretty well-known musician in Berkeley. And so she gave me a lesson, and I remember exactly what I learned. I always have trouble barring F chord.
Yeah.
So she told me how to use my thumb.
You're a thumb user.
And I do that even now. I use it and I go up to G. Yeah. That's what I learned in that lesson, and it's been very valuable because for some reason, like B minor, I have no problem. But F down there, I don't know.
I tell you a trick, and this is what I tell people. A lot of people come to me with that F issue. I don't play the full F. I don't use the low F on the low E string, right? So I start on the C note of the A, right? So I play it like this. I don't do that. I just, down here, boom. And I just mute the top, the low E, And I
Yeah.
play all my bar chords like that. It's a cheat, you know, it's a little cheat.
It's okay, however it works for you, you know. That's one of the things about guitar that I absolutely love is, well, a couple things. One, however you do it is how you do it, and that's great. And the other thing that I've learned, because I always played very high-end guitars. I mean, always the cheapest guitar I ever had was a Martin D18. That was the cheapest. Okay, I've always had amazing instruments, and so I always poo-pooed, like, you know, cheap guitars.
Yeah.
But now, as a guitar builder, many years later, I've decided that every guitar has a place. You know, there's some cheap guitar that we would think would be cheap is perfect for this sound and this song.
Yeah.
And a lot of that came actually from when I was in the studio. We began to realize this is the sound I want. This is the effect of the feel.
Yeah.
So
one of my favorite guitars that I have is an acoustic guitar that a friend of mine gave to me, and he said his mom paid $25 for it. It's a Hondo. I've never heard of Hondo, but he's like,
from Japan.
yeah, and he was like, dude, yeah, it's like, I guess it's crap. Dude, that's one of my favorite acoustic sounding guitars. Like, I've never found a guitar that sounds, acoustic rather, that sounds as crisp as that. We put on some heavy gauge strings, some Dean Marcleys, I love them, some blue steel, amazing tonal properties resonate out of that guitar. It's like, it's a $25 cheap crap guitar, but it sounds great.
It's all that matters.
Yeah.
Well, to me, as a builder, what matters is how it plays, the action, how it feels, and how it sounds. Yeah. So even as a builder of really high-end instruments, I'm much less concerned about how it looks.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
you're more
because the guys I'm building for, or even myself, want. Am I muted?
No, I hear you.
It says
I heard
mute.
a ding. I heard a ding. Maybe a cell phone.
It was my phone. I'm sorry. I thought I turned it off. Okay. Yeah, it's you know, it was my grandson who's building his first guitar.
Oh, awesome.
17 years old. It's just unbelievable watching this. It's like watching myself.
Yeah. I remember when I was down in Honduras with you and we were building ukuleles, like I was super nervous. You're like, it's fine. Just bend it. I'm like, I don't want to break it. You're like, it's fine. Okay. But like you have that experience where somebody like me, you know, who's just learning, you know, I don't understand it the way you do. So yeah.
Yeah, you begin to learn wood and everything. Yeah. For me, because I'm a guitar builder and not a ukulele builder, I was actually learning at the same time.
Yeah.
And I built a ukulele, and I overbuilt it so much because I was used to, you know, I have a ukulele here right now that I've repaired for somebody that his mom bought in a pawn shop for like $20. It turns out to be built by Martin in the 50s.
Whoa.
So I'm measuring the thicknesses. I'm going to really look at it very carefully, and I can't wait to get back to Honduras and tell these guys, wait, you're doing this twice as thick as you need to.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. So I want to get to the point where you travel around and do this, but we're way too far into this video. So I want to back up and start at the beginning, talking about you as a guitarist.
Okay.
So you started playing guitar, you learned some from one lesson from that lady, and then all of a sudden you're a pretty established at this point in the late 60s, a successful musician. What happened?
Well, I was totally self-taught, but again, this is in the 60s. And there were not a lot of guys playing guitar. You know, in my little circle, and I don't know if you know this, but, you know, my wife went to high school with all the guys from Creedence Clearwater.
Okay.
You know, and the Martin D18, the first Martin D18 I bought from Country Joe McDonald, from Country Joe and the Fish,
Okay.
from Woodstock, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And so I was surrounded by all this kind of stuff, and I would hang out with guys in the music store, and we'd play, and I'd learn to pick, and I'd do what they were doing, and we'd play together and sing harmonies and stuff. And I just kind of learned, because we didn't have what we have now, where everybody in the high school plays
Yeah.
guitar. Everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, literally. And if I was starting my guitar playing career today, it wouldn't be.
Yeah.
You know, because there's so many amazing players, and there's so much availability online even to find things.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. It's the age of all things informational. You know, there's no mystery. I remember watching a video that Paul McCartney was talking about wanting to learn the mysterious B7, right? And he said, like, they all got into this bus, traveled 2.5 hours away, knocked on this guy's door and said, "Hey, do you know how to play a B7?" And the guy went, "Yeah." And he goes, "Show us." And he went, "Phew." And he goes, "Okay." And then they took off, 2 hours back to their house. Cause it's like back then, that information wasn't as accessible as it is today.
Not at all. Most guys would buy the guy who wrote the books was called Mel Bay.
Okay.
They'd buy a Mel Bay book, and it'd be chords, and they'd try to figure it out. And that's the way we played, but we played all day long.
Yeah. So
All day.
did you play at Woodstock?
No, I was not. No, I wasn't even at Woodstock.
Oh, okay.
But I didn't play there.
But you know people, and you played with people who were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. But it's really interesting, because again, a lot of this has changed over the years because of a lot of things. But there was a small, like, because I was living in Berkeley, and there was this the guitar store that I'd hang out in. Everyone who's coming into San Francisco or to Berkeley or to the Bay Area, whatever, to do gigs, they'd all show up at Lumberg's. And so we had a constant flow, and I was working down the street, and every lunchtime I'd spend an hour at Lumberg's, and these guys would come in, and whoever it was, doesn't matter, you'd sit and you'd play. And that's how I learned about guitar, how I learned about what makes a guitar, what it is, and all that was from all that exposure I had at Lumberg's.
Yeah.
So that was really neat, because then you're able to meet a lot of really cool people, that guys that you heard on records and stuff that were just friends or acquaintances. I couldn't call them really friends because I didn't hang out with them, except at Lumberg's.
Yeah. But you, at some point, became a touring guitar player for most of the.
Yeah, I did. I did a lot of stuff around, big concerts, coffee houses and concerts and all that kind of stuff, and which was an exciting time. And that went on for about, at that particular time, around five years, doing the music of the day, the folk music and such of the day.
Yeah. Now, we had spoke prior to this interview, so I am going to mention it. You wrote a lot of the old folk music too, correct?
I still do.
Yeah. And
I'm writing a song right now called None Will Be Forgotten. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do. I like that.
Not one is forgotten.
Yes.
I'm writing that song right now.
I'm excited to hear that. I'm very excited to hear that, because I know what you're referencing there.
Yeah.
You have a story about the draft. Peter, Paul, Mary, and
Paul, Mary. Yes, I'll try to tell it in a short form. I was drafted in 1966, and I lived in Berkeley, and so my draft board was in Berkeley. And a week before I was supposed to report to the induction center in Oakland, I got a letter from the manager of Peter, Paul, Mary, and they were interested in doing one of my songs. And I didn't know what to do because the song wasn't copywritten anything. Because I had never at that point had to deal with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I went to the draft board in Berkeley in 1966 and said, what'll I do? Can you give me a day or two? And they said, well, they had a meeting apparently over the phone because they called me that night and said, we've decided that we'll just redraft you. So don't go to the induction center. We're going to redraft you. So I went and I got the song all copywritten and everything. And then I got, 2 months later, I got drafted again. So I went to the induction center, and all the way along the line, there are these tables, the stations, and all the way through, they would say, you know, they'd find out whatever. And they'd say, is there any reason why you shouldn't serve? Now, remember, this is 1966 Vietnam.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are so many people with all kinds of reasons why they shouldn't serve. I had a legitimate reason. I'm legally blind in my left eye.
Okay.
So I tell them that, and they say, well, that's too bad. Go to the next station. And so I kept going all the way down. And I get to the last table. And right behind is a door open, and there's a bus running, waiting to take people to Fort Ord. And they said, is there any reason why you shouldn't serve? And I said, well, I'm legally blind in this eye. And the guy, and again, you'll see why, a guy walked by and he had a bunch of stripes. And I don't know what his rank was, but he stopped and he looked at me and he said, son, why didn't you tell anybody? I go, I did. And he said, well, we got to send you to the eye doctor. So they sent me to the eye doctor, and I walked into the eye doctor's office, and he came in and introduced himself to me, and he said, I just retired from the military, and I think everybody should serve. And I'm going, then what am I doing here?
Yeah.
You know. And so he did my eye check, and he said, well, you know, it's interesting because if you had been drafted 2 months ago, you would have to serve. But because of your eye, they've changed the rulings, and now you're 4F. So I did not have to go into the Army. And just to kind of finish this story up, because it's really important, I was going in as on the buddy system with one of my best friends. And he went in, and of course I didn't have to. And a few months later, after basic training, he went to Vietnam, and we buried him. And I realized that had I gone into the service, I would have been killed too, because everybody in his, whatever the group is, platoon or whatever they call it, and I'm not sure, every one of them was killed.
Man, and you would have been there.
Yeah, I would have been there. So that really sobered me up an awful lot, you know, to realize God's watching over me.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't put it any other way. And just to finish my story about Peter, Paul, and Mary and my song, they never did it.
What? Oh man.
But that's okay.
Did you end up selling it to anybody else?
I don't think so. I don't remember. I don't think so.
Okay. Well, fair enough.
I recorded it on my first album, though.
Nice. Which is awesome because you have done tons of recording. So I want to figure out this transition between you becoming a very successful session player, guitar player, touring guitarist, to a point where you open your own recording studio and you're in a position to record a Crosby, Stills, and Nash album.
Well, I was asked by a guy if I would produce a band from back east. Can't remember the state now, but from back east someplace. And I said, sure, I'll do it. So I took him into a studio that I knew of, that was local to where I was living. By then I was living in Southern California. And So I took them into the studio and I produced the album. And it was the first thing I'd ever produced, and I had never really. I mean, I had done recording, of course, myself, but I had not worked, so to speak, in the studio. And I produced them. And at the end of those sessions, the owner of the studio hired me to be a staff producer. And so that got me into the studio thing. And eventually, I realized that, again, the owner of the studio, who was the engineer, really wasn't a music engineer. He really was more into recording dialogue and radio and that kind of stuff. So I taught myself to engineer.
Oh.
And eventually I left that studio and bought my own 24-track studio in LA. And so I had that studio then for about 15 years, something like that. So I was able to do a lot of different work, and we had in the studio business in LA, there's so many studios, and it's changed, of course, now a lot because of you can record a great album on your computer now. But so I would do master stuff. I do demos. I do everything, whatever I could to stay active and in business. So I had the opportunity to work with a lot of different people, and that was a great time. And but I got burned out. I mean, to be honest with you, because in the studio business, you're working like 24 hours straight, often, going back and doing the same thing again. And I really was burning out. And then my whole career projection changed from studio to what I do now.
Which is?
Well, I build guitars.
So
the way that happened, go ahead, ask.
That's what I want to get to. How did you get in a position where you're learning how to bar the F chord with your thumb to touring with, I mean, the elite legends of today? And you can't deny that that's not a true statement. You're very humble, you're very modest, but I know some of the people that you've had the lucky privilege of being on stage with, to owning your own studio, to now you build guitars. But it's not recent. You've been doing this since the 90s, correct?
Yes. I can't tell you the exact date, but I think it's about 28 years, 27 or 28 years I've been building guitars. I'll tell you what happened.
Okay.
I had the studio, and we decided it's a long story, which of course I don't need to get into, but we went to Ethiopia to adopt our youngest daughter, Hannah, who's now 36 years old. But she was 9 years old. And when we went to Ethiopia, it was just right after the Russia, all that stuff was broken up, and the walls came down and all that. And Ethiopia was part of that. A lot of people don't realize that. They were totally controlled by communists.
Wow. And
there was still a lot of struggle going on. In fact, one day I went up on the top of the roof of where I stayed with another guy, and we looked over he said, "Be careful, don't let them see you." We looked over the ledge and saw 3 people hanging from a tree. I mean, it was really, I mean, I had been in Berkeley where we were tear gassed and all kinds. This was totally different. This was really bad. And so I wanted to write. And of course I play guitar. I don't play any other instrument. I wanted to write. And so I went down and I was at a guest house, and I asked, "Where can I get a guitar?" And they said, "Well, sorry, the only guitars here are unplayable. They're the old Russian guitars and they're no good." So I actually wrote a couple songs on a piano, and I don't play the piano, but I had to get them down, but the emotional aspect of all that. And then I realized, while there, because we were there for 3 weeks. I realized there was a great need for guitars in the Church of Ethiopia, not the Orthodox Church, which is the main religion in Ethiopia, but in the Protestant church. And they wanted to use guitars and drums and stuff, but they couldn't get them. And so, along with other things, I began really thinking about, I've been in the recording business for a long time, and I'm burned out, and I've always wanted to build a guitar. So on the way home, I told my wife, I want to sell the studio and get out of the studio business and start building guitars. So that's how that began to happen. So she said, my wife, who's as crazy as I am, said, go for it. So I did. For the next 6 years, I was building guitars, totally self-taught. And but because I had been playing really high-end guitars, I did my own repairs. I took care of my own instruments. So I knew a lot about guitars, again, from the time at Lumberg's guitar store so many years before. I knew a lot about them. I just had never done it. So now I went home and began doing it, began building instruments. So for 6 years, I was building guitars, and with the idea of going to Ethiopia and teaching some guys how to build guitars so they could make a living. Because when we were there initially, the average income was about $125 a year, average income. And the guitars that they were selling, which were very cheap, very, very cheap guitars, were like over $500. So that's like 5 years of income.
Yeah.
And I'm going, that's crazy. So I learned how to build guitars and began to build up a reputation. And then about 6 or 7 years into it, I got an email from an old friend who was the pastor of a evangelical church, a large evangelical church, English-speaking church. Because, just as an aside, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, is actually the capital of Africa. Most people don't know that.
This is fun and educational.
Well, yeah, I was being educated as we moved along here too. The headquarters of the United Nations in Africa is in Addis Ababa. The headquarters of the African Union, which is like the United Nations for African states, is in Addis Ababa. All the NGOs, non-government agents, organizations, they're all headquartered in Addis Ababa. And so, and as a matter of fact, the embassies, there are more embassies only in the world, only in New York or DC, one or the other. Only New York or DC has more embassies than Addis Ababa in the whole world.
Whoa.
See, I had no idea. Yeah. So I was going into a very cool place with all kinds of stuff. Anyway, so the pastor of this church said that they had, and he knew me, we were friends, so he knew I was building guitars. And he also knew that I had an Ethiopian daughter, so I had connection.
Yeah.
And he said, the church has an organization, a thing where they're trying to help people be able to make a living, It's called People in Need. And he said, we've come across some guys who are trying to build guitars, and they don't know what they're doing. Can you come? And he had no idea that's why I learned to build guitars.
Whoa. He felt led to ask you if you could come, and you're like, that's the reason why I'm building guitars. That's
right. Exactly. And so I went. A month later, I was there. And that started 18 years of 56 trips. So 3 or 4 times a year for 18 years. And that's how I began. And so to be really frank, my own career was really put on the back burner because I was gone a lot. Yeah. And I was doing a lot of stuff for Ethiopia and for that whole project. And so a lot of what I had built up in terms of reputation just kind of flatlined. It was just there. And so that's how I began doing that and began traveling. And it was really interesting because there's no guitar builders in Ethiopia except for the guys I've trained. And you walk down the street, and a friend of mine was with us in Ethiopia. We had some couples that were with us once. And she said, it's like walking down the street with Steve is like walking with a rock star. Because everybody knew him, you know, because he's doing guitars, and everybody knew him. People would come from other towns and villages with their guitars for me to fix. Whenever I came to town, they all showed up. They all knew. I don't know how. So it was a great time.
Nice. So after that, after you went, so two questions. One, how are they doing now? How are the folks in Ethiopia doing, like, in regards to what you've taught them? Have they had a lot of success with what you have taught them?
Yes and no. They through different kinds of things, you know, and you're in a country with lots of problems, big time problems, and we had a wonderful big compound. We had 9 people building, and we were putting out hundreds of guitars. And then the people who owned the compound wanted it back. So we lost. So the people that were working with us, they had no place. They disappeared.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And so we had to, you know, make a new shop, and then. But today, the main builder that I taught is building guitars, and you know, but I finished there. I couldn't really teach them anymore. We couldn't get tools, and lots of problems.
Yeah.
And so now he's still building, and we're in contact. So, but that was an 18-year project.
Which leads us to how you and I met a couple years ago.
It's a great story, Mark.
Man, listen, I'm gonna get emotional just talking about it.
It's a great, you know, my wife is she's an actor, but she had a whole career as a marriage family therapist.
Oh, wow.
She still does 1 day a week. She still counsels.
Okay.
And one day, out of the clear blue, this was about 6 or 7 years ago, I got a call from an old friend asking me if I'd have a meeting with him and his son, because he wanted to tell me about what his son was involved in Honduras. And I said, sure, you know, have you got, if it's free coffee, I'll be there.
Yeah.
And so we met. And his son told me the story. His son was involved with a mission in Honduras called Sparrow Missions. And told me that they were wanting to build a wood shop, and they didn't know what they were in a place called Ministerio Vida. It's called.
Ministerio.
Huh?
Ministerio da Vida.
Yeah, Da Vida? No, Ministerio Da Vida. Anyway, Ministerio Vida. That's what it called. I don't know. But it was a rehab.
Life ministry is what it translates.
Yeah, exactly. And it was at a rehab place. And of course, you know, with lots of drugs and alcohol and all this stuff going on. And so they were interested in building a shop, and they thought, what can we build? And of course, the guys from the mission, they all wanted to build guitars. And so his son comes back home. He's down there. David, his name was, and he comes home and tells his dad, you know, and his dad said, that's what Steve Brown does in Ethiopia. So they called me for a meeting. Well, I had been asked probably from 5 or 6 different countries to do what I do. And I had decided a long time ago, I'm not going to pursue any of these requests. I'll meet, I'll talk to the people, whatever, and then and the ball's in their court. I'll wait on them. So out of 5 countries, Ghana, Kenya, Nigeria, I forget the other countries, not one came back after I explained really what this meant.
Yeah.
And not one of them came back. But I was used to that, so I'm listening, and they're telling me they want to build guitars, and you know, and I know where this is going. And then all of a sudden, David stopped, and he said, "What we really need is a woman counselor who speaks Spanish." I knew, right? That's my wife. My wife grew up in Peru.
Yeah.
Spanish was actually her first language, even though she's not. I mean, you know, she's Anglo, but Spanish was her first language.
Yeah.
I knew right then. Uh-oh, we're in for this one. And but I didn't tell him, and so I came home that night and I said to Becky, well, I guess we're going to go to Honduras.
Yeah.
And that was it. And so because the mission had been working at a place called starts with a C. Anyway, some place where like girls, high school age girls, who were put in
Yeah, they closed that place down.
casitas. Yes, they closed it down. Casitas. And these girls had been girl had been raped, and so what the government would do is throw her in there, and then, you know, out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
And so, of course, Becky could speak to them in their heart language, because that was her heart language too.
Yeah.
And so that worked out really wonderfully, and that and then I designed a little shop, and they built the shop, and we got some tools, and we started the process of trying to teach guys from the rehab center how to build guitars.
Yes.
And that worked out for a couple of years, and then eventually young men from the Bordos, which is now called Rancho Bonito, they began working, you know, like late teen age boys, and now they're all young men. And
yeah, which is so crazy, man, because like it's like, oh man, like these are the boys, but it's like, no, we're men now.
They are.
We should be called men.
And I'll tell you, Mark, they really are building instruments.
Yeah.
And the only thing that holds us back is, and I keep trying to change. We keep trying to bring more the correct tools, the ones where they can be more, but every one of them, any one of them, if they were here, would work in my shop.
Yeah.
And no one touches my guitars, and I build everything. I would have no problem having any one of them work in my shop. Yeah. And besides that, they're great guys. Yeah. And you know, I've seen them in action in a lot of different ways. And it's been wonderful. So that's how I started in Honduras, and we've been now. So I was doing Honduras and Ethiopia at the same time for 2-3 years, and then I was finished in Ethiopia, and things had kind of slowed down in Honduras, and the guys began building ukuleles, and one day, out of the clear blue, I felt like I needed to call the head of the mission and say, "Do you need me?" And he said, "Funny you should ask." And so began working again, you know, except for this year.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, 3 or 4
I'm
times a
anybody
year.
got to go to Honduras this year. We had a trip planned and it didn't. I mean, because of the Corona.
I had a trip planned last month.
Oh yeah.
Flights, everything. The day I was supposed to land was the first, um, not tornado, whatever it's called, you know,
Hurricane.
hurricane a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And so, I'm a man of faith, and I believe in God. I believe that God has it under control. And as soon as we can go, we'll go.
Plus, I feel like God has orchestrated so many different amazing things within my life and with your life to get us both into a position where we can, one, give him the glory, but two, be able to have this interview today and reflect on our life and see the many ways that we have been blessed and opportunities we've been given, and we've stepped up to the call and chose to serve. And that's been, I don't want to say rewarding, because that sounds like, oh, well, then I got something out of it. And I don't mean it like that at all.
I know exactly.
But
Yeah.
it's like when you do what you're supposed to be doing, when you're called to do something, no matter the situation, like you will just be given so many flags to let you know that you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. If
Yeah,
that makes sense.
absolutely. I agree with you. Um, the My life would be totally different if I was still doing gigs or if I was just building guitars. Now I'm probably building right now the best guitars I've ever built, and I'm very proud of that. And I work very hard at it. And um, but when someone wants to know what I'm doing, the first thing comes to my mind is what I'm doing in Honduras. It's the
Yeah.
first thing that comes to my mind.
Yeah.
Because those are things that are really important. I mean, I try to build the best instruments I can. I'm using the best woods in the world. I mean, I go look for everywhere, which is one of the things in Honduras. You have it. You have it right there. I can't bring it home. That's the problem.
I would love to get a hold of some.
Oh yeah, yeah. But it's for me. As I come closer and closer to the end of my career, and I look back at it, all the other things really are not that important to me. But building into young men's lives, teaching them something that that can be used and they can make a living with,
Yeah.
or further what they're after. It's like being a teacher.
Yeah.
It's like being a teacher. Um, there's nothing greater than to be able to give what you have and watch somebody take it and go with it. That's why I'm excited about my grandson building guitars.
Yeah.
I mean, he's asking questions that I didn't ask for 15 years after I started building. Seriously.
Nice.
It's like, wow.
Yeah.
Exciting stuff.
I don't know if you know this or not. I mean, you might have seen it on Facebook. But after I came back from Honduras, I got married and I had a child. And here recently, I got into the business of making guitar picks. Did you know that I was doing that?
Well, I know. Yeah, Hippie picks. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I got the arrowhead shaped guitar pick.
What are you making them out of?
Trade secret. Found out because I have patents, I have trademarks, I have business, I have all kinds of craziness. And I was speaking with my lawyer. The material that I found, I'm actually going to send you some of these. We'll talk about that afterwards. But I stumbled upon this material. It's white. It's about all I can say. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, I'll try and make a pick out of it. Because at that point, I was making them out of wood and deer antler. because the deer antler picks are amazing picks if you're like into real like shredding and whatever, like, you know, those are good, nice picks. But when I discovered this material, I contacted the company that makes the material, and I said, hey, and I started telling him what I was doing, and the guy said, man, like nobody, like we know what we do with our material. We know what our material is used for, what it's made for, why we sell it, who we sell it to. And no one has ever said they make guitar picks out of our material. And I said, do you want me to start promoting your company? And he said this. He said, man, if no one knows what it's made out of, he goes, and you're sure no one else has made a guitar pick out of said material? And I said, man, I've done so much investigation to link guitar picks and material, and nothing has came up. And he said, yeah, I'm the guy that makes this, and to my knowledge, there's never been a guitar pick. He goes, keep your mouth shut. I was like, okay. So I was talking to my patent lawyer, and we were going to actually patent the material. And then I found out I don't have to patent it. I can use it as a trade secret, which is, you know, like a Coca-Cola's secret ingredient, you know?
Right.
Yeah. So this is a trade secret material, but it's amazing material. So much so that that's almost exclusively what I sell right now is this material.
Are you selling different thicknesses?
Yeah. So I have 1 millimeter, 1.5, and 2 millimeter.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. And then if you buy a wooden pick, you know, you're going to get like a really thick, which is fine. I'm not saying those are bad picks. They have their purposes, but like you had said, you know, I have some very high-end exotic pieces of wood, and I'll spend a lot of man hours doing this by hand. That pick has to be sold for $35, $40. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Somebody sent me authentic olive wood to make picks out of, and it's like, okay, but like these picks are going to cost people money, you know?
Absolutely. That's
whereas these
man hours.
$5.
Yeah. I know. It's there's a lot of man hours.
Yeah, a lot of work. Hey, listen, we can't end this interview without talking about our mutual friend who just found out he's having a baby.
I'm so excited. I asked him. I was in Honduras in March, and actually the airport shut down. I was stuck in Honduras because of COVID. I was stuck there.
Yeah.
And fortunately, the United States government had sent a plane down there. And so coming back, it was empty. So a lot of Americans were able to fly home. Of course, they flew us to Louisiana.
Yeah.
But but at that time, I said to Chris, come on, how long have you been married?
Yeah, he's been married longer than me, and I had a baby before he did.
I know.
Yeah. So
I'm really excited about it. We got a lot of babies in that mission now.
Yes. What was really cool was, so I film all these interviews on Wednesdays, compliments of John Coleman's Classic Barbershop, proud sponsor. And I was almost here, and I was at a stoplight, and I got on Instagram because I was waiting to see if somebody had responded to a message that I'd sent them. And I saw that picture, and I was like, so as soon as we get done with this interview, I'm going to give Chris a call and congratulate him for becoming a father. I'm super excited.
I'm excited too. He is a great man.
Yes. So we are almost out of time. I feel like this whole entire interview has been very inspirational to so many people. But that being said, is there anything you have left to say to people watching this? Because, I mean, you've done just about everything you could have ever imagined to do in life, and you're still 110% going strong.
Yeah, I don't waste any time. Just don't waste any time. If you want to do it, do it. And I personally I was self-taught in recording studio. I was self-taught building guitars. And those are the two major things that I've done now with most of my life. And you learn, and don't be afraid to fail, because you learn from failing. If you don't fail, then you don't really learn anything. You just do it. And I've had my times of failing. I've built some real expensive guitars that were like pieces of junk, wrong wood, whatever. And but to me, just go for it, and don't be afraid. That's really how I feel.
Yeah.
And I don't think I would ever have been able to do the things that I've done if I was afraid to try.
Yeah.
So that's my advice.
Yeah.
So
I
yep.
like that. That's very inspirational to me, because there were several times growing up as a child, into my teenage years and into adulthood, where I wanted to do stuff, but I never knew anybody that could help me do it,
Yeah, exactly.
And I always felt like I can't do that by myself,
Yeah.
And I've met so many amazing people along my journey, and I've watched so many people come from nothing and build into success. I mean, I have so many stories of people who were in the same spot I did, but they didn't let that stop them. They didn't let that hinder them. And that was sadly me for so long. And now it's like, yeah, like, did I know how to make guitar picks when I first started? No, but these are amazing picks.
Yeah. Yeah, they just do it,
Yeah.
I forgot to tell you one thing I wanted to tell you real quick.
Go ahead.
The first instrument I made was a dulcimer.
I knew you were going to say that. You and me have had that conversation.
Yes. In fact, I don't know where it is. It's in the other room. Yeah, I have it. And then I built 20 dulcimers after that. And I sold every one of them at a swap meet. Every one of them I sold. Wow. And I forgot. Those were really the first instruments I built. That's long before I started building guitars.
Yeah. My father-in-law wants me and him to make a dulcimer. So that's a project that he wants to do with me. He doesn't play instruments, but my mother-in-law, her family, she has like a family dulcimer that was passed down, I think, or something. And he's always wanted to make one for her. So he and I, at some point, will do that. I'm very excited about that. But I knew as soon as you said my first instrument, I'm like, it's a dulcimer. I already know this answer.
Yeah. And I was living and working in the Santa Cruz Mountains, the big redwood mountains. And there was a little store, and you could buy dulcimer kits. So I bought a kit and I made it. And then, so after I saw what all the parts, because I really didn't know anything about dulcimers. And then I built 20 more since then. And I mean, right after that, I've built a big batch of 20 dulcimers and sold every one of them.
Nice.
And just recently online, I don't know how that came up, but somebody put, and I have one of his dulcimers. I didn't know. That was really fun.
That'd be cool. Well, Steve, I appreciate your time taken out of your busy day. I thank you so much for being a part of this. I'm excited to see what happens next in your life. I can't wait till you and I both get to go to Honduras again.
I know. Me too. It's good to talk to you, Mark.
You as well. You have a great day. I'll talk to you soon, okay?
Okay, bye-bye.
See ya. Man, Steve is an amazing guy with an amazing story. He has played with some of the most elite folk musicians. I mean, like, he was like, I don't want to brag, so we don't have to name drop everybody. So I'm not going to name drop everybody, but he has been all over the place, and he's done so many things, and he's found so much enjoyment out of making guitars and teaching other people how to make guitars. Now, the boys that we were talking about in Honduras, Irving, Luis, whom they call Pointe, Angel, Victor, Chris is like the ringleader of those guys. amazing. These guys are so phenomenal. I went on my first missions trip probably 5 or 6 years ago, and I fell in love with the place so much so that I went and moved down there. And I didn't come back until I met my wife. I ended up coming back and getting married and popping out a baby. But had COVID not happened this past year, we would have went, and we want to continue to go be a part of their lives. And that's ultimately the most joy and satisfaction Steve and I have found, is being able to learn how to do something and showing others how to do it. Listen, I love you. I hope you have a great day. I hope you're excited for all the other interviews coming up soon, because we got a bunch of awesome stuff in the bag. Mark Christopher here. You can check out the Hippie Picks website at playhippiepicks.com. That's up and running now. Get you one of these things. Like to thank John Coleman's Barbershop for always sponsoring the show, and as well as Landrum Investments. Listen, I love you. He loves you. And don't forget to be listen, he is a hippie, okay? Steve Brown is a hippie. I feel so bad wearing this shirt today. Love you guys.